So my guest today is Ed Kirwan, who created his programme Empathy Week in 2020. Now, before he started Empathy Week, Ed was a science teacher working in North London for 3 years. And he also worked as head of department and was the basketball coach at the school. Ed also travelled abroad making films in Mexico and India. And the stories that he filmed provided him with the inspiration that he needed to create the stories used in Empathy Week. Ed is so passionate about empathy and it really shines through in our chat. So let's just get to it. So Ed, welcome to the Teachers Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
So let's just dive straight in. We've had a little bit of a conversation already about empathy and I'm really intrigued about what you're going to say. So Empathy Week is your thing. Can you describe firstly what it is? But secondly, what does Empathy Week look like in a school?
Yeah, so Empathy Week is a whole school programme that's film-based and designed to help teachers save time as well and develop the skill of empathy and leadership in students. And what it looks like is essentially every year we develop 5 films of 5 different humans' lives, and we incorporate some lesson resources, assembly resources, and even empathy action project resources around the week. And we deliver it in a way that is structured but also flexible for schools to deliver in their own way. Previously, as teachers, and my team as teachers ourselves, we understand that every school has a slightly different timetable. You're in a different community, you have different kids, different needs, and you need to have something that's flexible. And so what Empathy Week can look like in a school can be different from school to school. Some schools will watch a film a day during Empathy Week, and they'll dedicate a lot of time, maybe even an hour, and do a lesson around it as well. Other schools will just watch the film in the morning, have a quick reflection question. Other schools might run Empathy Week over 5 weeks. They might watch a film per week and use it as a focus of the week and tie it in with their own values and things that they're doing in school, whether that's charity events or other things. And really what we're trying to do is provide a platform for this discussion to take place. Sometimes teachers say, well, why don't you just, create it as a pack that can be downloaded at any time? And to be honest, it can be. After February, it can be downloaded and you can use it at any time. But it's that having that focus in the middle of the kind of academic year, which allows students to go to think about empathy and think about other people and really try and understand someone that might be different from themselves, but also for a lot of students see someone that represents them and have an opportunity to say, hang on, actually that's a little bit like me. And what we tend to then see from the couple of years that we've run it is that you're not just developing empathy for the person that's in the film and learning about a new person's experiences, but you start to see students start talking about their own experiences and building empathy between each other and between the classroom and building that trust and rapport amongst students.
Yeah, I love that, because I was wondering where it was going in terms of, it's great to build empathy by, I suppose, looking somewhere else, but how do we then bring it back? Because we were just having a chat before we started that it seems, doesn't it, like empathy is a skill that we can all build, but some people find it easier than other people. And I wonder whether part of that is the experiences that we're exposed to in life, or maybe the way our parents are empathetic. I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. I think and this is maybe the issue with the pandemic at the moment, is we have varying levels now of students who have had interaction with other kids. Someone sent me something the other day. It was a table, and it just showed the school years that children are in now, and then the last year that they were in a school year that was undisturbed. And so, on my background, secondary teacher, so I looked at the kids that are in year 11 now. The last time they had a normal school year was when they were in year 8. That is crazy. That is really, that puts a lot of things in perspective. And if you're thinking about socialising, and some of these kids don't have siblings, so they've been locked down at home with maybe mum or dad, and no other siblings and no interaction with other young people. And then even if they do have siblings, it's like, sometimes siblings don't get on and they're not exposed to other people. And really one of the ways to develop empathy is exposure to other people and other experiences and listening and understanding them, which is why the films are so powerful, and films are scientifically shown to help develop empathy. It's because we're being exposed to something that is outside of our sphere of influence currently, or outside of our bubble. And if you can do that with your students, that's why school trips are so impactful as well, and kind of on the decline in a lot of schools. But if you can get your students out to museums or experiences, that they just see the world in another way. And the more and more you can do that, the more and more receptive of other cultures, other beliefs, other opinions. And you don't have to necessarily agree with someone else. It's just about understanding another point of view. And that is what I believe and is missing in the world at the moment, is this element of, I can disagree with you and still be friends, or I can disagree with you and still be civil. And we're in a position where we need to develop that skill of empathy. And one of the ways that we're trying to do it as an organisation is through the power of film.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I think, I suppose really during the pandemic, I mean, we've all got a part to play, haven't we? So parents will play a part, and I suppose really it depends on a parent's experiences as to how empathetic they are, but also you can be empathetic in certain situations, but maybe not other situations. So I suppose that's why it's helpful as well to kind of widen that. And I think, you can go one of two ways in the pandemic. You can either go, right, okay, this is difficult for us, we're just going to come insular and focus on us in our family, and we're not worrying about the outside world. Or you could go the other way and go, oh my word, there's so much more to be empathetic about, and we'll go find out these things. So I suppose really you're kind of going to get such a vast array of, not mess, but differences in people's exposure as well. So I love this conversation. Okay, so you kind of touched on this already, but why is it so important that we teach children about empathy?
I think as adults listening to this, we want to work with empathetic people. And I think if you look at school, a lot of people listening will have seen Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talk about creativity. And it's the most watched TED Talk of all time. And he says, there's a line that he says in there saying, what is the purpose of school? And ultimately the purpose of school is to prepare young people for the future that they're going to go into. But the problem is we don't know what the future holds. And that's his argument for creativity. And ultimately that's my argument for developing the skill of empathy. We don't know what's going to happen in the world. COVID's shown us that. We've prepared students for exams their whole life, even from primary school all the way up. And then COVID cancels them. So they're left without a feeling of accomplishment or, bookending their school years and, what is life? And then if we're not focusing on, and I believe we're not doing enough in education to focus on life skills, those skills that actually allow us to develop connections with other humans, and especially in a world that's becoming more digitalised and more connected, so you're more likely to work with someone from another country who might not speak your language as well as you. If we're not developing that skill of empathy, we're actually putting our students at a disadvantage in later life to get better jobs, to also be, I always make the argument for personal as well as professional well-being. Empathy is not just for other people, it's also for yourself. And I'm not talking about empathy here as self-love, I'm talking about it as an understanding. In our programme we have a film, and then there's a short kind of lesson or assembly version around the film. But then we also have 2 lessons that are attached to that film. One of them is based around empathy for yourself, and the other is empathy for others. And what the empathy for yourself is, empathy for others is quite obvious. Empathy for yourself is maybe not as obvious. But what we talk about there is actually you're understanding your own cultural lens. For me, that means being white, British, male, born in the UK, straight. I have to recognise that when I talk to other people, I have such privilege in my position. It doesn't mean that I don't have hard times and I don't struggle like the rest of people, but it means I have to recognise that I have privilege, and the way that I see a situation, or even the way I experience a situation, even if it's the same thing, will be different because of the way that I see the world. And so it's about like unconscious bias and just being recognising that no matter what, it's when people say, I don't see colour. it's not true. You do. It's how you react to it, and it's how you engage with it. And actually, for people that say, I do see colour...
And how much you're willing to learn as well. For me, it's always, well, what else can I learn?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're saying you don't see, you know, in terms of racism or the Black Lives Matter movement and things, by saying you don't see colour, you're actually doing a disservice to the experiences of someone else, and you're not actually willing to listen because you think that everything's the same for everyone. So it's just about recognising that, and it's not about being overly woke and all these things. It's just about being like, actually, my experiences are different, and I think that's just the best way to explain empathy and self empathy to everyone, is that just know that your experiences are completely different to everyone else's. Even for me, if I meet another white straight male who's born in the UK, my experiences are still completely different than his. It's just about recognising that.
I think part of it is teaching people to have an open mind. Not an open mind in a way where you're like... I'm thinking of somebody in my family who's a good example. Like, oh, they don't want to try anything that's what they don't know in terms of food. So obviously it's not just about food, but just being open to the fact that somebody else might like that, or you don't have to kind of go down that road. You just have to find out about it and try and understand it. It's very much just trying to broaden your experiences in some ways, and I suppose it naturally kind of comes from that, just by being willing to find out.
Yeah, I think it's like that comfort zone circle model, right? Everyone's got their comfort zone. I feel like everyone's got their empathy zone where they feel safe and they understand what's going on, and you just need to really focus on how can you expand that. And the difficulty with developing empathy as a skill is that it takes time and effort, and the time element, I think, is the real one, where it's actually you have to have time to properly listen to someone. So ask them questions, be curious, in a way that, you know, you're willing, like you're saying, willing to learn. And the problem is we live in such a time poor environment. You know, teachers are some of the most time poor people in the world, and schools are really constrained for time, which is actually one of the issues we have with Empathy Week, is that teachers are just, they look at it, they go, it's amazing, we don't have time, or it's just something new on our plate. And I can completely get that, especially during COVID. It's like, you just need to focus on what you need to do right now, and you can come to that later. But time is something that I think, yeah, everyone struggles with, but especially teachers and educators. And in the classroom, you're thinking, right, I've got this to do and that to do, and everything takes longer than you think it will. And it's just, if we can create, you know, our definition of empathy is that it's about understanding someone else and giving them the space and the time, whilst reserving judgment, for them to be their authentic self. And, you know, if we can create that space for a young child to feel like they're seen and heard and their opinion is valued, that's the skill of empathy, being able to do that. And if you can do that, you're going to create a classroom of trust where students want to learn, attendance goes up, behaviour increases, and ultimately you have greater success with your classroom. That is the power of empathy. And why empathy as a skill? Because empathy is the skill that underpins all the other ones. So we talk about leadership, and we want our kids to be creative, and we want them to work in teams. We want them to communicate. We want them to listen. All of those fall apart to nothing without the skill of empathy embedded. And it's now, I believe, that empathy is going to be the word of this decade, a bit like leadership has been in the past decade or two. Because without empathy, especially in this world that's, like I say, is becoming more connected digitally, 20 years ago, you couldn't log onto your phone and see someone fleeing a war-torn country whilst they're being shot at. That wasn't available. Now you can see, and we're being exposed to atrocities in a way that just with a click of a button and just randomly going on. And it's overwhelming, but it's also brilliant in the sense that it's bringing injustices to the surface that we previously didn't ignore, but just weren't shown to us. And I think that's why there's an overwhelm and people think there's an empathy deficit. I actually argue that the deficit is just brought on by the fact that there's an increase in technology. and an increase in connectedness across cultures that previously didn't mix as much as they now do. But we have to now work to do that. We have to now work to actually accept that diversity is a great thing, and there's differences in opinion. But that's where empathy comes in to like bridge that divide and mean that we can work together and live in harmony.
Yeah. I also think like the word that you said that really just jumps out at me that I think, you know, we all need to work on is judgment, especially in teaching. Mm-hmm. There is, you know, it's a culture of judgment, but also feeling judged. And I think it is about coming to the table and not judging, but it's also from the other side of coming to the table and not expecting to be judged, or not creating judgment in your mind and kind of taking that. And as you were talking, I just think it's interesting, isn't it? Because we absolutely need to look at this, and it's important, you know, for students to really kind of grasp these skills. But if you step back and look, what kind of empathy is given to teachers right now? You know, that whole understanding of, oh, teachers have no time, but actually a lot of society don't understand that. They don't empathise with what kind of job it is. And I just think, obviously that's not, you know, an excuse, but I think that is something interesting to bring up, because what we're saying is we've really got to help our students to develop a skill that we're not being afforded ourselves from other people. Yeah,
and I've still got a lot of friends that are teachers and speak to teachers daily, and it's something actually like we're doing on Twitter. The theme for Empathy Week this year is My Passion, My Purpose. And we've actually asked teachers to send in what their passion and purpose is, and we're reposting it and tweeting about it to try and show people that aren't teachers that maybe follow us, look what they do, look what these people are doing, giving their time to. And it frustrates me that, you know, I think the NHS is brilliant and amazing, deserves all the applause they get, but there was absolutely no recognition for teachers during the pandemic and the lockdowns, because the assumption was that, oh, school kids aren't at school, so therefore teachers aren't doing anything and they're having a jolly. And actually they're working twice as hard, if not all hours of the day, trying to juggle the kids that were in school with then having to be in school some days, to then setting online work, to then kids not having online provision. Absolute nightmare. And I think that there's a real need to talk up teaching and to make it a profession like it is in other countries, that's seen with the same level of respect as doctors, lawyers and professions like that, because it is such a vocational, dedicated way of living your life. And until we do that, there's going to, you know, I used to have students that said, you know, how come you became a teacher, sir? Can you not, you know, you couldn't do anything else, sort of thing. And you just think, hang on a minute, I've got 2 degrees and then a teaching qualification. You know, you have to do lots to get into this position of teaching. And there's definitely something there around, we need to work on creating some empathy for teachers and the profession of education, because it is holding back what could be, you know, a really, really amazing profession for a lot of people. And I'm one of the statistics of the people that left because of the pressure, because of all the stuff that I hated. You know, I want to work with the kids. I don't want to fill in loads of reports and just make sure that there's some red pen on every page to show it's been marked. What pointless exercise marking is, unless it's a test result, and obviously you need the test score. But marking, pointless result. I'd rather spend 10 seconds saying to, you know, Jimmy on the corner, Jimmy, I really like this, great creativity, but you could actually just check your spelling in this, and if you need help, you can come and see me after. That is worth more, and that's a terrible bit of feedback, but making it up on the spot, yeah. That is worth more to that child than a piece of red pen. Yeah. Yeah, and they listen to your voice as well. I think, right, I'm going to bring us back because we've got off on a tangent. One thing I just wanted to say is what makes it harder is there wasn't really empathy for teachers in the beginning, and they weren't understood, and then it's just being made harder, which kind of doesn't help. But why are you so passionate then about empathy and ensuring that children leave school with this as a skill? Yeah, I think it brings back to the point that I said about we're preparing students for life. and we want them to be successful, and we want them to be global citizens. We want them to come into society and play their role as a good citizen that wants to help other people, that says thank you in a coffee shop, that has manners, that helps their community. And again, a skill that underpins that nature of being a citizen and being a good member of society is empathy. And Empathy Week is the design of it is that if you take a child from 5 years old to 18 and they take part in Empathy Week every year of their school life, by the time they leave, they'll have watched 65 different people's life stories. And, you know, I'm about to go to Nepal, fingers crossed, in less than a month's time to go to be with some Nepalese schools, but also film for Empathy Week 2023. And the idea is that every year we go to a different country and we film. And then when they come into
which countries have you been to so far?
So India, which I was filming in 2019, and then because of the pandemic, the past 2 years have been both the UK. So
right, okay.
Nepal is the next one, and then I think we're going to probably maybe go to Mexico for 2024. I don't know. We'll find out, but we're building more and more connections.
Swaziland.
Is it, mate? Have you been?
Look into Swaziland. Yes, and that would be really good. So we stayed in an orphanage there, and all of the children, basically, they were in there because their parents had died of AIDS, and it was really, it was really sad because there were children there. I mean, there was a 14-year-old boy, and he was absolutely amazing. And I think a few years after we left, he died as well. And just to try and think about what that must be like, because over there, I think this information is 10 years old, but there's 4 different kinds of drugs, and you can put different combinations together, but they only have access to 2. So I think you've only got the one combination. So once that stops working, it stops working. And but yeah, so that would be a great place to find out some stories, just about different life and being open to different things, because, you know, I've brought the thing that you should kind of feel sorry about, but there's so much there as well that's amazing, because 100%. Empathy isn't just about, you know, the bad stuff, is it? It's also about the good stuff, and looking at different things that you could bring into your life. What can you learn?
Yeah, think about creating empathy so that, you know, as a child, your friend gets a better test score than you, and you can still be happy for them, and still understand how much that means to them as a benefit. You know, this is, again, coming back to that concept of, you know, if you watch 65 different live people's stories, and you then leave school having experienced someone who's from a different religion, culture, ethnicity, background, maybe they're from the same area as you, but they have different beliefs. And you don't have to agree with them, but you can then work and get alongside them. And I think a lot of the issues that we see in society stem from just a lack of understanding and a lack of the skill to empathise. And what that means is the lack of, you know, not being able to have difficult conversations. And I think that's a dangerous thing, especially now in the world of sitting behind a screen and being able to say whatever you want. But when it comes to face, young people find it hard to have difficult conversations, to say, you know, look, I actually disagree with you, or I didn't like the way that you acted, and you can't change that, but I want to understand why you did act like that. And I think that's what we need to move forward to. And there's plenty of adults out there that lack empathy. And I would even argue that as we get older, we become even more opinionated and stronger in our beliefs and what we think, and less likely to change.
Oh, yes,
and
really.
There's a real need for developing empathy. You know, we've worked with a couple of corporates, and again, empathy is needed for agreeing as well as it is disagreeing. Say you're in a school as a teacher, and okay, we all decide to do the same thing, and everyone goes, yes, great idea, agree. But further down the line, we realise that we didn't actually ask why we were all agreeing, and we didn't understand the reasons for that. And actually, something breaks down, and we realise that we all had different reasons, or all had different ideas in our heads as to what we thought was happening. But because we just agreed, it happened. And the same with disagreements and agreements, they both kind of stop conversations, Because as soon as you agree, you go, great, let's move on. And if you disagree and you just can't find a thing, you just go, okay, well, let's agree to disagree. But you don't necessarily understand what's going on. And if we can just get through maybe the discomfort through empathy and just be like, no, I actually really want to understand. As a teacher, I didn't call it empathy and I didn't realise it was empathy at the time. But if I did send a child out to, and I was a secondary teacher, but if I sent a child out to just cool down, I would say to them, look, you can't hit that person, and I can't excuse that behaviour. But why? What's happening? What's happening at home? Have you had breakfast? How did you get to school this morning? Why haven't you done your homework? What is happening in your life? And every single time there was a reason. Didn't excuse the behaviour. The punishment was still there. If you've done something wrong, you have to do your time or come back and help out or whatever it is. But the next time, I actually can speak to that student in a way that I'm not getting frustrated, that I'm there as a support. And it just made my classrooms so much calmer, so much easier. I would get more homework from students. I'd get them wanting to do better. And it just came from, okay, I know that young lad has one parent at home, his mum. He's got 2 younger brothers, and every day after school he has to pick them up and then make them dinner. And then his mum goes out to her second job. Like, no wonder he hasn't done his homework or he's copied it from Wikipedia. It's
yeah.
So what I can do for him
himself at at that age, you need time for yourself.
Yeah, you need time to be. He was like, and that was a true story. He was like 14. It's like 14, and then I think back to when I was 14. My mum was a childminder, so she looked after kids, but she was always at home. So I had my mum at home all the time to look after. I'd come in, there'd be a snack on the table. It was like, I didn't know I was living the dream, but I did when I was teaching. I realised that most of the kids that I taught didn't have that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you're a teacher listening and you found this conversation about empathy really interesting. What ideas can you give them? What actionable steps could somebody listening right now take out to move their class forward in empathy?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, how can you give your students a great opportunity to talk about their own lives? Because I think that's the first thing. And that could be a post-it note. It could be 5 minutes in the morning. What was the best thing about last night and what was the worst thing about last night? Or you could do it anonymously. You could ask them about what they're looking forward to. Just start giving them opportunities to talk more or express themselves more, because that allows you to understand more about them. And I think the second thing is also, as a teacher, with whatever age group, we're living in the time of, I think, authenticity. And yes, there's that teacher-student divide, but if you can show a little bit more of your life and talk a little bit more about your feelings and how you regulate your emotions, or things that maybe upset you and things that maybe made you happy, that's going to model, we know how effective modelling is as a teacher. That's going to model the behaviour that it's okay to speak about these emotions, that it's okay to feel negative about things. It doesn't mean you're depressed if you just have one negative thought, that you have these various emotions. Other things are just trips and videos and books. Anything that exposes young people or anyone to another thought or another way of life that's beyond their comfort zone, beyond their bubble of their community. Over time, this is the thing about empathy. It's not, even I say with Empathy Week, it's not great, we did Empathy Week, we're all empathetic, and we can show Ofsted we're all empathetic. It's not that at all. It's the dedication and commitment to say that we are committed to expanding the horizons of our students so that they will be good citizens no matter where they are in the world. And that's the long game of Empathy Week is like I said, it's the 65 films. It's not the 5 films in 1 week, you leave, great, fantastic. It's the ability to dedicate yourself to how can we have these small touch points where we can expose our students. And we do that. We as a teacher or as a previous teacher, I don't want to patronise people that are already doing this. I know that teachers are already doing this. Empathy Week is just another resource that's specifically made for teachers in a way that the films are great. And I think it's, you might see something on TV or especially like popular culture and find something where a celebrity speaks about something, use that in an assembly and question it, and don't be afraid to put questions out there that might be provocative in a way that kids might disagree with, and be like, great, that's great you disagree and you think that, and that's awesome. And actually harness these conversations, and you don't need to be trained in a subject to do it either. I think that's the important thing. Every teacher can develop empathy by just focusing on how can I, make them think in a way that they're actually, oh, maybe that person does think that, and why do they think that? And then, okay, well, I don't agree with it, or I do agree with it. And it's just coming back to this small touch points. Reading's really effective, especially fiction, and then also films and trips. I think, like I say, I remember, what do I remember from school? That day that was special because we got to go and see something, and I might have been a bit bored staring through a museum window, but even the bus journey and then seeing other people out there and learning what careers are out there and other jobs and being excited, those are the sort of experiences that the more we can give young people, the more empathetic they're going to be and the more excited they're going to be to learn.
Super, thank you. You've given so many ideas there. When is Empathy Week?
So this year, Empathy Week is from the 21st to the 25th of February, but really we like to say it kicks off on the 21st because we are a global programme. I've had some schools in the UK say, oh, we're on half term then, and this year in particular it's a really split half term. So don't worry if you are and you want to take part, because we try and make it as easy for teachers as possible, having been teachers ourselves. So one teacher from your school can sign up, download the resources, put them on an internal drive, and there's PowerPoint lessons there. We even create a letter to send out to parents that's pre-written that you can edit. We create PowerPoints that you can also edit for your own internal use. We have a parent pack you can send out. There's a teacher pack. We have downloadable certificates. There's loads of resources. And also, if you just want to just log on and watch one of the films or two of the films, you don't have to use it all. We want students and teachers to take part, obviously, but it's what you can do in your own time. And I think if this is your first year, go and see what it's about. Go onto our website, which is empathy-week.com, and you'll see the trailer. And you can take part any time onwards from the 21st of February. And we also have classroom projects for primary school, and it is free for every state and government school across the world. So we do that through because we want to, and because we think it's the right thing to do. And we hope that you take part and send us a message if you want to be involved.
Super, thank you. So we know we've got empathyweek.com. Where else are you on socials?
Yep, so we're on Twitter at The Empathy Week. We're on Instagram at Empathy Week. And we're on LinkedIn. We have an Empathy Week page as well. So you can find us on those socials. Twitter we're particularly active on, and you can see again our trailer will be a pinned tweet, so you can experience the 5 different films that are going to be shown this year, which range from James, who's got Down syndrome, talking about how he's just an ordinary bloke in his own words. Lippa, who is a semi-professional footballer who wears a hijab and talks about racism in sport and how she's trying to navigate that and now be an ambassador for women in sport. We've got Courtney, who talks about mental health. We've got Kwesi, who's actually an ex-student of mine, who's a musician and a rapper and chasing his passion and doing whatever it takes to get there. And then, I always forget when I label them off. I always forget one. I can't remember now who I've forgotten. It'll kill me. But I build such good relationships with them. Courtney, Lever, James, Kwesi, and oh my gosh, it's completely gone from my head. And it's always one other person that I forget. So it's never the same person. It's just someone.
Just the person you
Oh
say
my
last,
gosh, my brain.
I feel exactly the same. I feel the pressure then. I'm like, oh my word. I forget people's names when I start talking to them. But I haven't forgotten. It's the pressure.
Sorry, the last person is Dami, who's an amazing young lady. And she, both her parents were deported when she was younger, and she stayed in the UK, and she hasn't seen them since. And that's a really, really powerful story.
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow, I'm going to have to go watch that myself. But thank you so much. This has been such a lovely chat. I've really enjoyed it.
Amazing. Thank you for having me on and listening to me talk everything about empathy. But yeah, I hope it inspires some teachers.
Yeah, I'm sure it absolutely will. Thank you.